I'm Theresa Borg, and I'd like to talk to you today about the ego and the defense attack cycle. And I found this is so important to understand because it's affecting so much of your life without perhaps you even realizing it. So I'm going to give you an excerpt of the lesson 2 of my emotional resilience and self-esteem course, which I hope to be putting out shortly, the whole 10-week course, as a course that perhaps you can buy online or on YouTube. So keep an eye out for that on my website, www.positivelyjoyous.com. And if you like today's lesson, the rest are very much like this, and more details can be found online. Okay, so let's talk about the mind. We have a split mind. You might have experienced this as the head-heart battles, where your logical, rational, let's say left brain, wants to do what you think you should do, get the sensible job, don't go traveling the world like your heart wants to do, but do what you should do, the logical, rational thing. And the ego lives in the left brain, or we could call the ego the left brain if you like. The right brain is the creative, spiritual side, and it wants to live your dreams. The right brain controls the left side of the body, and obviously the heart is on the left side, the emotional center if you like, and obviously this, we could say if you like, speaks the language of the soul. So for temporal lobe epileptics, there's a very, very severe operation called a commissutary. And what that is when epileptics have severe epilepsy, it can be in one hemisphere and then start to travel across to the other. So in order to protect the other side of the brain, what they do is they cut the corpus callosum, which is the bridge between the two hemispheres. And that stops the epilepsy moving across to the other side, protecting the other side of the brain. Now, when they first did this operation, what they find temporarily is that the left and right brain have two distinct personalities as such. And the example I always remember from Friedrich Schiffer's book, The Split Mind, is that they took a young man, for example, who was a university student, I believe, and he had had this operation to cut the bridge and had now two personalities emerging. And when they asked the left logical brain as such what he wanted to do, he said, I want to be a draftsman, go to university, or that kind of logical pathway, if you like. And the left side has access to verbal language. So in order to get the answer from the right side, they asked him to spell out with Scrabble letters his answer. And they asked the right side of the brain, if you like, what do you want to do? And it spelled out racing driver. So we can see that there is two distinct personalities within us as such, but because our bridges are normally working perfectly, it becomes a kind of mishmash between them. And because as such, the right brain doesn't have access to spoken verbal language, we tend to get our messages from the right brain as intuition, gut feelings, imagination, pictures, all of that kind of stuff, flashes of inspiration, whereas the voice in the head tends to be the inner critic, the ego's voice, if you like. So first we have to understand that there's two parts of us, and definitely in the Course in Miracles it talks a lot about the ego and what he calls, if you like, the voice of the Holy Spirit. So this work really comes from the Course in Miracles, but I'm going to present it to you today so that we can all understand it, so that we can all see how it's all working, whether you've studied the course or not. so let us talk about the ego. So I have an analogy for the ego that I think works perfectly well. And it's really to describe the ego as a company. Now, let us say when we first began, we didn't have language, we lived very, very simple primal lives, maybe in small groups, just hunting and gathering and survival. As we developed, we then started to live in bigger groups and use tools, and language has to develop in order for us to organise our lives. So you can do the cleaning today, you're doing hunting, you're doing gathering, all of that kind of stuff. So we need the ego brain to develop, if you like, in order to organise ourselves and our lives, to communicate, to make life work perfectly. And so we could say this analogy is, you know, I start off of self-employed, just me, and I don't really need communication with myself as such. But then I start to take on a few employees. Now I need to organise them, I need to communicate with them. And we all work in one big office, and, you know, we get on very well, and we all have the same aims, and the company works well. Now, let's say we've expanded now into a big global company. And what happens is we have departments. So I might have a payroll department, a human resources department, accounts, marketing, on and on and on. Now, I have to make sure that all of those departments work together. And although we have the whole aim as such of working for the same company, we lose sight of that. And so those departments tend to work for themselves. So accounts might be saying, well, we've got to cut the budget, we can't afford any more staff or anything. Whereas HR might be going, but we need this staff, we can't work without these merchandisers, and, you know, we have to invest in the company. And so although they're still working for one company, they've lost sight of the priorities of each other, and they become individualized, if you like, little units. And in some ways that's what happens in our mind. There's different parts of your minds with different wants and different wishes and different aims and different fears and different resistance to all other things. So what happens is that the ego as such has become compartmentalized, and the parts now can attack each other, or at least have different aims and different goals that don't necessarily work together. And that's why it makes it very difficult to understand the ego, and often it feels like it's out of our control. So if one department in my mind says, I want to give up smoking, and the other one says, oh no, when you first started smoking, that boy said you were attractive, and therefore I've got smoking linked to being attractive, then you know, there's a part in the mind that goes, do you want to smoke or do you want to be attractive? And most of us would go for being attractive, and therefore we have trouble giving up smoking. So because parts are working against each other, or I could say beliefs and programs are not aligned, beliefs and programs in the mind are not aligned, clashing or working against each other, then actually I feel stuck, and I feel like I'm a victim in some ways to other parts of me. And then that gets projected out, and now I'm a victim to other people out there who look separate and in conflict with themselves, therefore can be in conflict with me. So the ego uses a mix of smoke and mirrors, distraction, fear, protective tools and techniques in order to keep itself safe. It's not necessarily interested in you as such, it's interested in keeping itself safe and keeping itself going. And it needs to always have a problem to work on, because that's what it was for. It was to problem solve. It was, you know, to make sure everything ran smoothly. So it's used to having a problem to solve, and it wants to keep itself going. If you became super happy, super peaceful, super calm, nothing affecting you whatsoever, you wouldn't have a need for an ego, and therefore it starts to fear its death. So it starts to get very, very clever about ensuring its own survival and bringing your attention to how much you need it. And one of its best tricks is the attack defense cycle, which I'll explain to you now. Ego buys us into a world of danger and other people that are separate from us, and that because we know that we can attack others, we fear attack from them. And because subconsciously we all know what we're doing, we all know that we're projecting, we all know that there are no others out there, we are all one, and that this is a mind-based reality as such. And the ego desperately wants to keep us away from that. So as I say, it hides cause and effect. So let's take an example. So if I have a lady, let's say a lovely grandmother, whose daughter, let's say, is working full-time and hasn't really had time to bring up her children in the way that she wants them. They're crying out for love and attention. And so the mother doesn't want to accept guilt that she hasn't been there for the children, and so believes, the ego allows her to believe, that the children may actually have ADHD. So this is just an example. So the mother goes to lunch with the gran and says, I'm going to look for somebody who can diagnose the children. They're out of control, there's nothing I can do, I've done everything I can, there must be something wrong with them. So the grandmother knows underneath that the mother hasn't spent a lot of time with them, but isn't courageous enough to say that and feels bad because she's judging her daughter. So she says, well, maybe you don't want to get them labelled. Maybe, you know, there's some other things that you can explore. The daughter hears this as an attack. What are you saying? Why don't you support me? You never support me. You know, I'm going to do this for the kids. They need to be, you know, have some help, and they'll only get that if they're diagnosed. Why don't you ever support me? You never supported me. All of this kind of stuff. Okay. Both are innocent because none of this is conscious. None of what they're doing is conscious because the ego really hides everything well. So let's look at it from both points of view. Okay. So if I look at it from the daughter's point of view, she consciously believes that the children, you know, have ADHD. She doesn't want to accept she's been a bad parent, and therefore, as far as she knows consciously, is doing the right thing. The ego says you're doing the right thing, you're a good mother because you're looking out for them, you're going to get them diagnosed, you're going to get them help. So it sold it to her as a positive thing, okay? So she believes at this lunch she is innocently talking to her mum about the children and doing the right thing. She then hears the mum not support her, which probably presses all her buttons from childhood. Perhaps she doesn't believe the mum supported her enough, and you know, we've all got beliefs and programs about as what mums should be, and when they don't, you know, tick our boxes, then you know, we withdraw our love. So she now feels, the daughter now feels attacked by the mum. And what do we do when we attack? We feel attacked. We're either going to defend ourselves, and really defending yourself is attack, is attacking back. There's no difference. Defense and attack are the same thing, okay? So now daughter is in attack mode, even though Gran would say she was actually, again, here's the ego telling her, that she was actually trying to do the right thing to help the daughter. You don't want the children labelled, they're labelled for life. You know, maybe there's different ways of exploring it. Let's look at it from the Gran's point of view. The Gran has innocently come to lunch, hears the daughter say this, genuinely doesn't believe it's the right way to go, and therefore tells her daughter her honest opinion. thinks she's being supportive the way, you know, that she should do. And here she gets attacked from the daughter because the daughter, you don't support me, blah, 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 blah. So we end up with two innocent people who believe they're innocent being attacked by the other and believing that it's the other one's fault. The daughter believes the mum doesn't support me and is attacking her decisions, questioning her parenting, and the gran believes that she was trying to help, and here it is again, the daughter attacking her. How often have you been in that situation? You're trying to help and it's being thrown back in your face and you believe you're innocent. Let's look at it, what's really going on. So that's the ego story, okay? We're now into an ego defense attack cycle that we're both going to get upset, both going to be hurt. And interestingly enough, before I move on, then we both go home and start to feel bad about ourselves. Because remember, we've now sinned, if you like. We've now done something really bad. I've upset my mum and my mum's upset me. The mum's upset the daughter. And so we go home and we start to beat ourselves up. Because there's no one there to discipline us anymore. We're not children. And if there's no one there to discipline you and you've sinned or, you know, done something really bad, if there's no one there to punish you, because we've got it so strongly linked together, then you go home and punish yourself. You beat yourself up. Why am I such a bad person? I shouldn't really shout at mum like that. You know, why do I always say the wrong thing? You know, maybe I should have said something different, says the gran. So there's, on that level, the ego in some ways has won, hasn't it? So we've made a mistake, we feel bad about ourselves, we've hurt the other one that we loved, and now we feel even worse about ourselves. Then it might bring up pride to stop us apologising. And, you know, in the worst case scenarios, we may never speak to each other again. And the ego has won because it's allowed us to be separated from this other person again. Look, here's another one who's attacking you, and this person is close to you. If they can attack you, anyone can attack you. Stay with me, I'll look after you. Now, what's really going on is, and this is going on in everything, okay? I am the problem. I am the solution. So let's say I was the daughter and I've just upset my mum like that. I've just attacked my mum. Now, how could we have played that out differently? Okay, so neither of us got into that argument, if you like. And let's say I've been doing my work, I've learnt the attack defense cycle, or I've studied the Course in Miracles, whatever. So here I am, I'm the daughter, and I say to my mum, you know, I'm going to look for a diagnosis for the children. And mum says, well, maybe that's not the right thing to do, Now, if I don't hear that as attack, it can't be an attack. Because if, you know, you can pinch me as much as you like. If I'm not reacting, you're not hurting me. You're not having any effect. It's not a spiteful thing because I'm not reacting. So if I hear the mum say that, and I think to myself, okay, I know this is projection. She's saying what I really think. And I go and explore that, and I say, thanks, Mum. Thanks for bringing that to my attention. I'm going to go away and think about that. Now, I'm not saying she's right, and I'm not saying she's wrong. I'm just not accepting hearing that as an attack. And therefore, she hasn't done anything wrong. And therefore, we won't get into the big argument. And Gran won't have experienced my wrath because I didn't feel attacked. I didn't need to defend or attack. I took her as my greatest spiritual teacher, which any other person is, especially if they're pushing your buttons. I heard what she said. I might have had resistance, but I know that's what happens because the ego now is fighting to keep me in the old mindset. But I hear what she says as my greatest spiritual teacher. Okay, I'm going to take that away. I'm going to think about it. And actually, when I take that home and I think about it, maybe there is an element of being right there, and maybe she's right. And so the way that we can overcome the continuous attack defense cycle is to be aware of projection, to own that you are the creator of your reality. Therefore, I am creating everything, including my mum and that conversation. And therefore, I take that advice and I go away and listen to it and run with it. Break the defense attack cycle. Again, it's all about being self-aware. It's all about realizing, understanding how the ego is working. To, as I say, own everything. You can only solve a problem you own. You are the problem, and therefore you become the solution. So everybody out, this is where the Course of Miracles really comes into its own, because it's continuously trying to teach us that everybody out there is us. Is, you could say, an aspect of my mind, just great spiritual teachers trying to show me all the time what's going on subconsciously for me. And as long as I don't push against that, as long as I accept those grateful gifts, I can be happy, and so can everyone else around me. So I have to be aware of the voice in the head. So I can give you another really surreptitious example. This is how clever the ego is, because it knows I'm on the ball about this kind of thing. I taught this lesson, I think it was on Friday morning, and I came home, and through the morning I'd been emailing with a client who was continuously asking me about, I'm a clinical hypnotherapist, about, you know, what I would do in this situation, what I can offer, all of those questions. And I know, I'm experienced enough to know, if you have to ask a lot of questions, there's a lot of fear going on around this, a lot of, obviously, being unsure, maybe about me, maybe about the whole thing. And this, surprisingly enough, this woman, you know, revealed she's anxious. When I came home from the class, she went, I had received another email from her, and she went, and finally, can you provide any testimonials? And immediately my button got pushed. Oh, for God's sake, what now? You know, trust your instincts. You know, that's how I live. That's natural and normal for me. And a kind of little bit about, I don't need to provide testimonials. You know, my ego voice kicks straight in there. But I caught it, and I thought, wow, even in just this tiny little thing, I haven't even met this woman, she's not even a client of mine, but even in this tiny little thing, it's trying to buy me into that defense cycle. And so I had to write the reply email very, very carefully without allowing it to sound like an attack or a defense, because I don't collect testimonials. You know, I have a lot of re-referrals from people, and people coming back all the time and being referred by friends and family. That's testimonial enough for me. And so I wanted to, you know, put that in the email without making her feel bad or wrong. So I really had to really work on that. And I just thought, wow, how clever is the ego? It can't do it in kind of open air anymore in these relationships, because I'm on it, and so it finds other ways to catch me. So it's about being aware. It's about understanding the mechanisms of the mind, as I'm trying to teach you in all of these videos, and as the Course in Miracles is, that's just what it's continuously trying to teach us. So forgiveness for the other for what he did not do is key. That grandmother did not do anything wrong. So I, as the daughter, perhaps, I can forgive her. I can say thank you for that information. I'm going to go away and think about it. I forgive you because maybe I didn't want to attack, but I forgive because I understand that's my problem, mine issue. And I love her for the information she's just reflected back for me, for that opportunity to learn about myself. There's other things that you can do. For example, I like to If I was in that situation, I might just kind of metaphysically or in my mind step back, take a deep breath. When I feel like I'm going to go, she's pushing that button, almost I can hear she's saying you're a bad parent. I might step back and breathe, maybe step back into some light if that helps you, and just breathe. The mindfulness work, let that agitation go for a moment and go, okay, thanks for that information. So there's lots of tools and techniques, and it's a lot about being aware. Really, I would so suggest you really look for how this is playing out in your life. How you feel innocent and somebody unjustly is attacking you, either verbally, hopefully not physically, but verbally. Or we call it pushing our buttons, don't we? And then watch yourself attack or get defensive. Because if you get defensive, that's still attacking because you're making that other one wrong. And if you really want to do this on the metaphysical level, on the real higher level of the Course in Miracles, what's really going on is the ego has just brought you into believing that the dream is real. That this other person is real, that the dream is real, because really we're just dream characters. And if I argue with a dream character in a dream, when I'm a dream character, does that make any sense? Does that get anybody anywhere? No. The only sane way to deal with this is to get woken up and out of the dream, out of these games. And that's to become a whole mind, one-mindedness. Everything and everyone is me. So I notice that the suffering is always in my mind, that I am able to take back my projections. Now, if I take back my projection and I don't go home then and beat myself up because I've gotten into an argument with my mum or my gran or whichever way it may be, then there is nothing to be punished for. So I'll just be happy on both levels because I'm not attacked, I'm not defended, I've taken back my projection, owned it, got the gift of working on it and hopefully releasing that program, but also I have nothing now to feel guilty about. And therefore I'm so free. And it's amazingly simple to get happy really, really quickly. It's to just not get into that attack defense cycle. In some ways it's so simple. And also to forgive yourself if you've fallen into it, but to forgive yourself for that, to forgive yourself if you fell for the trick again, and just aim to do better next time. The American Army say fail to prepare, prepare to fail. So I need to prepare my strategy for next time. So maybe next time I'm going to lunch with Gran and I don't know, maybe I've gone down that road and I know that she's going to say something again, then that's okay. I'm ready. I'll take it. I won't react negatively. And so we can all get happy really, really, really quickly.